Okay, great. Thank you. Haita gusuyo chuganabira. Wanne Mariko Middleton yaibin. Itashiku nigesabira. Hello, everyone. My name is Mariko. I hope you are well. I'd like to welcome you today to our panel. But before we begin, I'd like to just acknowledge that we are here as guests on Lenape land. And we are so grateful to the folks of Cultural Survival for helping host us and amplify our voices through this panel. And I also just want to acknowledge that we are here as part of the UN Permanent Forum on Indigenous Issues. And we are amongst many voices right now that are wanting to be amplified. So we are grateful for this moment in time. And before we begin, I'd like to just open with a quick prayer. Sariutoto atoto, uyafafuchi kami shitiguafu debiru, tsuya yukaruhi masaruhi, UN Permanent Forum on Indigenous Issues debiru. I'd like to welcome in energies of the directions. So, againu ukami ga nasi, irinu ukami ga nasi, Nishinu ukami ga nasi, finu ukami ga nasi, ukami no menso charukutu shitiguafu debiru, uyafa fuji ga nasi, ukami ga nasi, mimanti misori, utabi misori, sariutoto atoto. And so we welcome our ancestors and we welcome the energies and the gods and the spirits of this land. We ask for their blessing, their protection, their inspiration, and their guidance on this day. And thank you. So let us begin. And so I'll join you all up here. And so my name is Mariko, and I will go ahead and get us started in our panel forum. So my name is Mariko Middleton. I am diasporic Ochinanchu. I live in present-day Vermont in the United States, but my roots go back to Nanjo-shi and the Ryukyus, present-day Okinawa Prefecture. I am Nisei, second generation. And then I would like to introduce our panelists. We're going to do this sort of Yuntaku style, and I will go ahead. Oh, it looks like you have the microphone. So we'll start with Shinako-san. If you could please introduce yourself, your name, where you're from, and then your ancestral roots.
はいたい。中英一平二フェイレーベルクングトゥーシウナシスリティニューヨークの国連会ジティムマジュンチバティイチャビラヤンディイチ集ま登録とのシリガフンディウムトイビン Thank you so much. We get together this time again in New York. We are Uchinanchu, we are Ryukyuan, we get together. I'm so happy to see our faces all together. And then thank you so much for the Cultural Survivor to let us have this time. Thank you. And I'm Shinako Oyakawa. I was born in Okinawa City in Okinawa Island. This is one of the island in Ryukyu Island chain. And my father is from the northern part of Okinawa called Haneji. And then my mom is from Okinawa City, Nzatu. And I was born in next to U.S. Kadena base. So our island is really militarized. And then I moved to Naha, and then I live in Naha, close to the airport, and then which is next to the Japanese self-defense force bases again. So noise pollution, a lot of accidents, including sexual crimes, and it's all related to like land grabbing and then contamination and so on. So we cannot really avoid from the militarized situation in Okinawa. That's how I start to recognize about what's the issue we have in Okinawa. Yeah, so I'm here today, and then I'm so happy to represent our indigenous peoples of the Ryukyus. We don't have any recognition yet, but still we have our language, culture, and our diaspora, friends and families all around the world. So we get together to talk about our struggle and then our challenges and then our good practices is really helpful. I'm chair of ACSILs, our association, Indigenous Association. Yes, that's all for my interest.
That's all.
ちょっと長かったよ。
That's so much. Thank you, Shinako さん。いっぺんにヘデビル。
はいたいぐすよちゅうがなびらわんねレクシアイビンわたよファフジェつかざんしんたはくからちゃびたんゆたさるぐとにげさびら So, what's up? My name is Alexyss McClellen-Ufugusuku. Most people call me Lex or Achan. I go by many different names, I guess. I'm a Shikenu Chinanchu Inagu from South Bay, San Diego in the United States. I'm also mixed race Uchinanchu. It's a little more hazy as to whether or not I'm second, third, question mark generations. But I trace my roots back to Okinawa Island specifically, but Shitahaku village in Kochinda and Tsukazan village in Hayabaru through my mother. My grandmother, in her own way, was also Shikenu Chinanchu, or was born Shikenu Chinanchu as well. My grandmother was born on the island of Tinian in the Northern Mariana Islands when Japan colonized much of the Pacific. And so my grandma was also born into diaspora and then was repatriated actually by the US Navy in 1946 back to Okinawa where she grew up. And my mother grew up in Okinawa for the most part as well. I'm really excited to be here at the Permanent Forum once again. I think Shinako and Victor and I were trying to do the math. I think this is 5 permanent forums. Which is kind of crazy at this point, but we're just excited to be able to come back here, sort of give voice to a lot of the issues that we know are going on back home, but don't always get amplified or translated into English or any of the other major Western languages.
Thank you, Lex.
Hai sai gusuyo chuganamira wanne Kinjo Victoria bin yutasarutu unigesabira. Well, hello everyone. My name is Victor Kinjo. I am a third, fourth generation Ryukyuan, born and raised in Brazil and São Paulo. So my grandparents and my great-grandparents immigrated from Okinawa to Brazil in the 30s. Actually, due to the colonization and also the diasporic process caused by economic and political crisis. And yeah, so I'm also very happy to be here. And somehow my presence here is also linked to the research process that during the PhD I was studying Japanese literature and then post-war literature. And of course, I remembered the stories about Okinawa that I heard from my grandparents. Then I started to read more about what happened in Okinawa in the post-war. And then we reached this information that, of course, we are an indigenous peoples, which were recognized by the UN in 2008. And I think it's very meaningful because of this, we could meet other indigenous brothers and sisters and share our stories, share our pain, and be heard, and also know the story of other peoples. And this makes a lot of sense and also strength our voice and our fight. So we are very glad to be here. It's not always easy because we also get a knowledge to other struggles that indigenous peoples are facing everywhere in the world. And in the same time, as I said, I think this makes us a big family. So I was raised as an ethnic minority in Brazil. And when I'm here, I feel I'm part of a very, very big and beautiful, diverse, amazing family, which is the indigenous family of this earth. Tasarugutu unige sabida.
Thank you so much, Victor. That's a great lead into my next question, which is the concept of Ichari Bachode. Ichari Bachode is also the name of our of our side event that will be taking place tomorrow at the People's Forum, a day after tomorrow on Friday. Yes, thank you. And so what I'm curious, so Ichari Bachode is an Okinawan Uchinaguchi proverb that roughly translates to once we meet, even if by chance we are brothers, sisters, family. And I am curious to hear from each of you what Ichari Bachode might mean. And why don't we start with Victor, just because you were speaking to this a little bit, please.
Yeah, you're right. Yeah, so it's so important, like when we realize the strength of the language, our indigenous language, because some values, some philosophical values, cosmological values, they are hard to translate, and they are part of our worldview. That's why we need to save every indigenous language, because language is a way of looking to the world, and we are seeing our world in crisis. So maybe what if in our language, our ancestor philosophy, there are some very important, very important values to guide us in this moment. And Ichari Bachode is maybe one of our most beautiful and main values, which means, as Mariko said, like, we are brothers and sisters when we meet. And we all already had this feeling when you connect to someone for some reason, and then like there is a very deep and precious connection that remember us about who we are, and we can share our feelings, our thoughts. It's so good, you know, and like in this moment where we live in a very individualistic way of life, and it's so hard to build community, to build these ties. I think this value is very important, and especially here at the UN, when we have the chance to meet people from all over the world, which is, I mean, maybe in the US you have more this experience, but for example in Brazil we don't have this kind of diversity, you know, like we hardly will meet somebody from Bangladesh or India or Nepal, you know, and then this, you know, you look into the eyes of each other, and we recognize ourselves as being part of this beautiful family, as I said, of the indigenous people, or as Kino Shokichi would say, it's like the people of the earth. Ne? So like, may this Ichari Bachode philosophy be a true between Israeli and Palestinian and Ukrainian and Russian. Like, we are brothers and sisters, we have common ancestors, and we should be able to live together with love and peace.
I think I'm going to take this topic of Ichari Bachode and split it into two. So I think there's the Ichari Bachode that we see and we feel and experience when we're at a like massive multi-indigenous space such as the UN Permanent Forum. And I think that there's some stuff that you just don't have to explain. When you're talking to other indigenous people and you're explaining like what has happened to your people, they're not gonna be like, oh, but didn't the colonizers bring democracy? Like, there's just not this, there's an underlying understanding that what we have gone through is traumatic, and yet all of us made it here and we have all survived, and that itself is a form of kinship. Similarly, but in a different way, I think, like, especially growing up as Shikenu Chinonchu, I find myself very lucky because I'm from South Bay San Diego. It's a heavily militarized city. I grew up with other Okinawans, but that's not the case for a lot of people. And there's just this thing that happens when you meet another Uchinanchu that perhaps you're friends with them from Instagram or in the Discord, and you meet for the first time, and it's just so easy. Like, there's just no other way to explain it. It's as though you've known each other much longer than how long you followed each other. There's a baseline of understanding, and in part, it comes from everybody else not understanding. And so I think that's how I tend to think of Ichari Bachode these days.
Interesting. We say like when we say Ichariba Chode, and then we have our following words like Nunu Fidate Naga. What kind of word should we have when we meet each other? You know, we don't have to care about our gender, race, class, or anything. Like once you meet, and then we can be brother and sister. That's my understanding of Ichariba Chode. And as like Achin said, it's really easy to be friends and family with other indigenous people. We share a lot. It's sometimes it's so hard for me to talk to other like Japanese people, even though I grew up speaking in Japanese. I don't usually speak English, but it's so easy to understand, get to know each other in other language, because we share history, struggle, and then a lot of challenges. So like our indigenous philosophy, it's so interesting. And then if we even have the proverb for it, in our language, I really appreciate like our ancestor, made this word and succeeded to us. And then so learning from the philosophy, as Victor said, like, we have possibility to be friends and be family with any other, people around the world. Because this is like a big lesson our ancestors give it to us. So we hold this Ichariba Chode spirits. Levi's Uchinanchu. Yeah, that's what I want to do.
Thank you, Shinako-san. Actually, could you say the second part of that proverb again? I have not heard that before.
Okay, nunu, fidate no, aga.
And what does that roughly translate to?
Nunu is like what kind of? Fidate is like what should we have?
That's amazing. I'm just curious, did you both know the rest of that proverb? Yeah, that's incredible. Thank you so much. And hopefully that translates to the folks out there as well. It's beautiful to have all of these different perspectives on what it means to be Ichariba Chode. And I also feel like through each other we remember. And there are different aspects, say, Uchinanchu diaspora in Brazil or Hawaii or the US or back in the islands. And we all hold pieces that make us complete. Like we see ourselves in the mirror of each other. And I forgot to mention, so Ichariba Chode for me is the name of the podcast that I help co-host. It's Ichariba Chode, Okinawan Voices and Stories podcast. And yeah, for me, it really is a remembering, it's a rediscovering, a deepening of knowing of self through the lens of another person. So I know myself deeper as I know and see others in my community. And it's not necessarily just like Okinawans. I really resonate with what you said, Lex, around like it's kind of split into two, or there's multi-layers to it. It applies differently in different contexts. But meeting another Uchinanchu or Okinawan or Ryukyu, there's an unspoken just solidarity and understanding and empathy of like what we've all had to go through. And like you don't have to explain, you just show up and you are welcome. I have never experienced that in another culture. Or with other peoples, except for perhaps in places like this at the UN Permanent Forum, amongst other indigenous peoples who are clearly here to voice the struggles that they might not, that are going unheard in their respective locations. And with that, I would love to actually move us to the next question. And so I mentioned earlier, our program on Friday is called Ichariba Chode for the regeneration or revitalization and regeneration of the earth. And each of us will be speaking at that. I would love to hear a little bit about what you're planning to speak about on Friday. So let's actually start with Lex.
Okay, so what I'm going to be talking about on Friday actually has nothing to do with the regeneration of the earth. I did not read the theme correctly when I submitted my talk to Mariko. However, we are at the UN Permanent Forum for Indigenous Issues, and so I wanted to really talk about when do our people really start to appear on the radar of the United Nations itself, not just the Permanent Forum. And so turns out it's actually very, 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 very early before even the creation of the UN. As I mentioned earlier, my Oba-chan, my grandmother was born in Tinian, which was actually part of the League of Nations mandate that was given to Japan to govern after World War I. the League of Mandates system later became the trusteeship system of the United Nations following World War II. But the United States actually started to eye the Ryukyu Islands for separation from Japan in 1943. And in this document, it talks about how perhaps some form of oversight that was internationally sanctioned would be how best to separate the Ryukyu Islands. That eventually became the UN system. That form of international oversight eventually became the trusteeship system. And one of the earliest sort of treaties that the UN brokered was the Treaty of Peace with Japan, which was signed in 1951. And if you actually read Article 3 of the Treaty of Peace, it says that Japan must concur with any request of the United States to move the Ryukyu Islands under a UN trusteeship if the US asks. And so our history, not representing ourselves at the UN, but being discussed at the UN, is much older than the Permanent Forum. It basically dates back to the beginning of the United Nations as we know it.
Come on Friday to hear more. I would like to learn more. Okay, to you,
Yeah.
Victor.
Yeah, okay, well, no, for me, this is totally connected to the issue of Earth regeneration, because I think this topic is about like knowing about what's our history, how come we arrived here, and maybe healing, trying or looking our wounds, and then how can we address to it, and of course, this the relation between ourselves as humans, and also us with the land and the waters and everything. But yeah, well, I'm planning to talk about arts, performing arts, and the centrality, the importance of arts in our culture, in our cultural revitalization, linked also to ancestral knowledge, which is this kind of perspective and cosmology that we are bringing here, and also planetary and health and identity. I feel that I mean, we how can we remember like this that we are part of this planet Gaia, which is like there's this vision that's Gaia as being a living organism, which is suffering somehow with water pollution and air pollution, and how can we, as indigenous peoples, as human beings here, cultivate planetary health, also to cultivate our own health. We are living in a kind of sick world, a lot of mental health problems too, and war and all these, and somehow I believe that we kind of start to become sick too when we watch all this and we have no response somehow. So, and also addressing the issue of identity, because I think that it's so important that we can rescue our roots and our identity, our indigenous identity, and in the same time, like dialectically, we can recognize everyone also identity, and why not we can bridge like a planetary identity. Like sometimes we forget this side, and then we become like I'm A and you are B, and then we fight. And then okay, I'm A, you are B, but we are all parts of the alphabet. So they're like being more complex to think about identity and how do we relate to this beautiful earth that we live. Yeah. And there will be some singing. Like I think that, like quoting like a French philosopher, Georges Banu, just like when we have no words to speak about something anymore, then we have to sing. And so there will be some singing in the on Friday.
Beautiful. Shinako-san, would you like to go next?
Sure. So I'm going to talk about language perspective. Since after colonization, our language was kind of like a band, to speak, and then language is not just a language, but it's it's connected to philosophy, our way of life, and natures and music and everything. We cannot just cut it off the language. It's deeply connected to our indigenous language and indigenous identity. So losing the language, you cannot understand about yourself. Who you are, where you're from, who is your ancestor, where do you live. So today, a lot of people really literally losing our indigenous identity, and the word indigenous itself is kind of like a weird word in Japanese. So not many people want to say like a weird indigenous. It's really different from what I've seen in United Nations, especially the Permanent Forum. We're here to reclaim our rights. But in Okinawa, unfortunately, we don't see any value using the word indigenous. And then it's so, sad to see we cannot proud of ourselves, being ourselves, our, Ryukyuan identity, our indigenous identity. It's really nice because to name yourself your indigenous, because you have deeply connect with your land, your ancestor. That's the world we are living in. But if you lose our indigenous identity, you cannot connect to our land and ocean directly. So we have to apply the colonizer's perspective to see our water, our, forest and skies and everything. So that's how we're, losing. Our island is really beautiful, right? We have so many birds, fish and water coral, and it's so nice place to be. But we're destroying, our nature at the same time, and we have to do something with it because it's not just for us, but we have to succeed our land and language and culture to next generation, next generations. So that's what I want to talk about on Friday. I have to be there by that time. But Mariko, what are you going to talk?
Thank you. So the topic that I hope to speak about on Friday is the concept of honoring Hajichi. And so Hajichi is the traditional hand tattoos, which are typically worn by the women of the Ryukyuan culture. And there's a lot of pride in it, and celebration and just explosiveness that has happened around this reclaiming tradition that was banned by the Japanese during Okinawan colonization. And so this practice has been lost and is now coming back. And I'm still kind of working through exactly what I'm going to say. So it's not totally fully formed, but I'm gonna try not to get too emotional. But I really want to talk about grief and how that relates to Hajichi and honoring Hajichi and the story of Hajichi. And I am so proud to have Hajichi, and I'm so proud. I can't imagine the generations that have come before us that were ashamed to have. They had Hajichi before the colonization, but they could not be they experienced extreme forms of discrimination because of this, and they were not allowed to leave, or they had to needed to burn it off their skin, or just horrible things. And so there's a lot of pain, I think, and in this time, in this reclamation, there has been a lot that has been projected onto Hajichi, and I would like to reframe Hajichi as sort of an animistic, an entity that has its own spirit and being, and we are the carriers of that spirit and being, and its expression comes through us in different ways. And in this modern time, as we are reclaiming, I think Hajichi, the spirit of Hajichi has now taken on so much, including ego, aspects of human ego. And because it's so directly tied to our identities, and we are so passionate about this identity, and it's so personal, I am experiencing and seeing strong emotions, especially in social media spaces, and it's happening very quickly. And I think what I would like to center is just space for identity work related to Hajichi, and then how it's okay to slow down, and to consider and truly honor what it is that we are doing in this reclamation, and being very intentional about how we are choosing to put this, like where these aspects of our culture and carry it forward for the next generations. And I don't want to say that there is a right or a wrong way to do this. It is just hajichi. There are no experts in this. It is a practice that was lost, and we are now reclaiming through texts that are written by like academics through their lens, and we are interpreting that. So it is definitely fraught with many layers. But yes, that is the humble beginnings of what I would like to talk about on Friday. Thank you. Yeah, great. I would like to move us into the next question, and I'm going to maybe perhaps set the context of this grief. I will speak for myself. I am holding a lot of grief this week at the UN Permanent Forum. The question that I would like to ask is, how many times have you been attending the UN Permanent Forum, and how is it going in this iteration of the Permanent Forum, and how is it different? And I know for myself, we are here on day 3. I have been here. I have been to the forum 3 years in a row, and this by far is the most emotional, and perhaps that is the state of our world, layered with all of the other things that are happening. But yeah, I would love to. There's a lot, and maybe take a breath before answering. But does anybody? I'm going to leave it open. Does anybody feel called to answer that right now?
I'm going to do it really fast because I want to give the most surface level answer, and I don't want to follow anyone deep, which is bad. I feel quite run down, and I think it's just the pace of news and the world, and also I think the beautiful thing about all of us coming as ACSILs is not an organization that hires anyone to do this work, and so all of us have full-time additional jobs, and we believe in the mission of self-determination, and that's why we come. But it also means that I'm trying to finish a dissertation by May 30th at the same time. I tore my ACL 2 weeks ago. Energetically, that has been really challenging, trying to get around the forum, but also trying to make all these doctor's appointments and then writing our statements in the waiting room of doctor's appointments, because I just don't have time right now. And I don't even think I've let myself process a lot of the other news, because I think it'll just make me crack, to be honest. I don't think I would be able to get through the rest of this week and next week and like also absorb everything else that's going on in the world. So maybe I'm tired because I'm being avoidant, and it's probably also not healthy, but I think the world is very different this year compared to last year. I've been to the forum 5 times. 2019 was my first. And I was so in awe of the forum. I was like, wow, a place just for Indigenous people, and I get to be one of them. And I think I said like 8 words the entire week, because I was just so awestruck at like people I really respected, but also I didn't think I thought I didn't know enough or have something important enough to say and take up that space. The next forum I came to was very different. It was 2022, and I was the only person from ACSILs who was able to get in during this time of COVID, and I was terrified until I came as a voluntary fund recipient. And I was exposed to exactly Chari Pachore, an entirely new cohort of people and friends who weren't Uchinanchu, they weren't Ryukyuan, but I knew they had my back, and I spoke for the first time in a session. And to me, that was its own type of awe. I was in awe, but I was in awe of people really supporting me, which I'm just so grateful for. And so that to me was a forum, even though it was COVID and it was still very scary thinking about COVID in the world, I felt more joyous. This time feels energetically scary for different reasons that I can't quite allow myself to think too much about yet. So
Thank you, Lex. I just want to acknowledge your humanity in all of this. And yeah, everybody that's coming here is a human with their whole other, like their human identity from outside here, and being Indigenous is a part of that. But thank you.
you can be Indigenous and clumsy and end up having to be all the time.
Thank you for your voice and showing up even though you are so tired. Shinako-san, please.
Okay, I started coming to you in 2012, and then for this forum, this is my 5th time as well. It's so complicated to know about what I can do, or how I write my statement or where to submit. It's like what I can say, what I cannot say, and I didn't know anything. There is no input, no lecture, and then nothing in Japanese. I really didn't know how to do it, but we only have a motivation, passion. We want to do something. We have to go to UN, and then we have no funding, which is we pay by ourselves from our pocket. And then, while we are paying, rent and then, fee for everything. But we want to come. And then we just have a strong passion to come back here and let's make happen. So we still want to try a lot. Not, for us, for our ancestors, for the next generation, for our islands. And then that's really beautiful point of, getting together. And especially I'm from Okinawa. I don't read, I can, but I cannot read English, really fast or a lot at this, in short period of time. But we have diaspora, you grew up speaking in English, and then he grew up speaking in Portuguese, We have because of colonization, we have diaspora, but because of diaspora, we can connect to this part of the world so easily with you guys. And then because you have, your own network, and then we have a lot of friends and families here already, that's really, really helpful. And then that's, so again, we, in our islands, in our community, not many people, wanted to say we are Indigenous. They were hiding our identity. We didn't even say we are Ryukyuan. We just said we're Japanese. But now gradually, more and more, especially young people, wants to learn about the indigeneity, what's being Uchinanchu, what's the history of Ryukyu. It's because of, you guys. And then I'm so happy to be here. And then if I have chance another, years, even we have so many challenging things. And then it's not easy to be around, so many meetings and so many inputs, and then it's so tired, but it's just really worse. And then I want to bring everything back to Okinawa to share that issue to my people.
Thank you, Shinako-san.
Thank you.
I just want to say thank you so much. Hearing you speak, I am getting emotional because we have really been holding so much in this space that we're in. I feel is so challenging to navigate, and just my heart, all of my being is so grateful for you coming and fighting with your own resources, and then the resources of all of our ancestors. Oba-chan's always take my money, making sure we're well. So thank you for coming to this forum, this stage, and us connecting through various means to make this possible. So thank you so much. Okay, Victor, thank you. Onegaishimasu.
Thank you so much, Shinako-san and Alexyss, and the Ryukyu people that have been supporting this movement. For me, it's also 5th time, and I can say that it was very deep for me. It changed my identity, actually, because one thing was to know this information. Another different thing was to be recognized by other Indigenous peoples as Indigenous. So this changed everything for me. Sorry. And I'm as a Brazilian, which we have a big Indigenous and very important Indigenous population. I could say that like this bridged a tie with between me and this population, and also like a comment about the representation of the indigenous, né? Which you were saying that in Okinawa or in Japan is very hard to identify because of the images, the imagery that was built by the colonization to what is to be an indigenous, né? And this also happened in Brazil. But I think that in the past decades, our movement was also working in through this cultural deconstruction and reconstruction of what is to be indigenous. That's why I'm also working with art, because I think it is a way to rebuild or to transform this representation. Né? And what I think it's beautiful and is that because of the presence of Ryukyu here, also, and because of our connections, then when I come back to Brazil and then update our community about what we've been doing here, also started to change our identities there, you know. So many other people, many other youth started to identify as indigenous, and this identity, like, it's a cosmological, né, difference, because I mean we've been always seeing ourselves as descendant of Japanese, Nikkei. So I don't have Japanese citizenship, although racially I've been always read as Asian or Japanese, but it's an identity linked to this descendant of a nation state. Né? But when you say Uchinanchu, or you know your indigenous identity, it's not that I'm a descendant of, né? I am Uchinanchu, I am indigenous, because it doesn't depend on a passport or a citizenship or a state recognition. So, like, this forum is very deep and very important in this sense too. You know, politically speaking, very important, but also culturally subjectively, also very important. And just one last comment. I think that it's tiring also because we receive a lot of information that we don't have, and it's not easy. Like, I mean, we were in the morning in a session from the Asian indigenous peoples, and then we find out that there are brothers and sisters, there are killings, there are a lot of injustice, there are arresting. So how do we deal with this after that, né? And then that's why, again, I think the place of arts and culture in the forum, I wish we would have more of music and celebration. Like today we've seen a short movie about the history of the movement. And I mean, it's very important that we celebrate while we are here too, you know. So I hope that we can be part of this proposal of let's sing more, because also singing and dancing are very indigenous ways of communicating and celebrating. So yeah, I think every organization has the challenges also, and I think it's very nice that we are here so we can maybe be part of this process, né? And yeah.
Thank you, Victor. You actually answered my last question. No, it was perfect. It was perfect. Which was the final question was, what are your hopes and dreams from here? And maybe you can elaborate on that. But yeah, so from this moment forward, do you have any hopes, dreams, prayers, aspirations to take from here?
I would like for the U.S. to get out of Ryukyu. I would like for Jetai bases, at the very least, to get out of Ryukyu. I would like self-determination to be respected. I think that there are just so many rights that are outlined in the UN DRIP that I just want to grab them and just shove them down Japan's throat and be like, respect this! But I think, unfortunately, because of the nature of the bilateral relationship with Japan and the United States and the existence of Article 30 in particular, the UN DRIP, which is an anti-military clause, there is probably a long way to go for us to get official recognition. Official recognition, I think, would be nice, and I think it would help us in a variety of ways, especially legally maneuvering in the courts, but it's not the goal. It's a goal, but it's not the goal that we stop at. I think it is another milestone we should hope to hit to be able to further advocate for the respecting, especially of our self-determined, especially of our human rights. I think that's probably the next marker, and then we can keep strategizing from there. But I think we're probably a little way off still. But that's the next goal I have in my sights. Keep asking for recognition to advance, especially self-determination, especially human rights.
Thank you, Lex. Shinako-san?
Well, as educator, I hope kids and then students can be proud of themselves as being Uchinanchu, being indigenous, and then so that they can respect to other people, and then they can respect to the nature, and that's my starting point. I want to share the beauty of our language, our culture, and then being indigenous. So starting from that, I think I can dream more about it. That's what I want to.
Thank you. Victor?
Thank you. I was remembering a verse from an indigenous philosopher, Brazilian indigenous philosopher, which is Ailton Krenak. And he was saying, he was making this connection between the colonization and the killing of the dreams, like the colonization as a process of convincing everyone that it's the end of the world and there's nothing we can do. So a way for us to resist and to be resilient is exactly dreaming, and dreaming we can dream with all this. And I mean, things happen, and even I always remember or I think about this 100 years ago, for example, if someone would talk about, I don't know, European Union, it would be totally impossible because the world was in war, Europe was in war, everyone, and then finally what happened? They built European Union. It was so impossible, So sometimes we get sad, but I think the dream is something that can guide and can give hope to us. I'm not sure if we are going to see this, but it doesn't matter. It can be maybe the next generation, but we are part of this chain, even if it's painful. But it's very good that we're together. Then you don't feel totally crazy. This is another issue that I wanted to point. When I was in Brazil, writing, reading alone. So am I crazy? What's going on? So when you meet a movement, and this movement is reaching something, and then you're part of this as this global indigenous movement. So then we can dream with a lot. We should really dream a lot and work together and sing for our ancestors, so we can have energy to work together. Yeah.
I always feel kind of bad going after Victor because Victor's so articulate and philosophical, and I'm like, what do I want right now? And I think, this is the other thing, because I think everything you've said, the beauty of dreams, long term, being proud of our identity, these are all things I want too. And it's going to take a lot of self-reflection on part of ourselves and our community, but also just to twist it a little bit, we have work to do. States have a lot of work to do, but also museums, universities, cultural institutions, they have work to do as well that they could do without states telling them to implement the UN DRIP. Museums, I don't know if you're watching it, you can be better than states. Give us our ancestors back. You can enact self-determination by engaging directly to us, because Ryukyu and ancestor remains are all over the world. Be better than governments. Why wouldn't you want to do that? I think that's a very tangible thing that could happen, like, I don't know, tomorrow. Kyoto University, be better. Give us our Uyafafuji back tomorrow. Like, anyways, that's my other thing I just want.
One more thing, since we have this time, and the UN. Yeah, I mean the UN. Like we are at the UN, and everyone, wow, nah. Like this place has a lot of potential, like to really play this role of the change that we need, and this it's linked to resources, of course, like that we have like a crisis of multilateralism now, but maybe from this crisis, nah, we should be talking about that. Like we need much more. We need much more, and maybe we need a headquarter in Okinawa. We need a headquarter in Brazil too. Like the UN could be funding like a lot of intercultural, international, artistic work, scientific work between Palestinian and Israeli, and between Ukrainians and Russian. Like really bridging more, because it's possible, and it's an organization that has the structure to do this, but we need to do more. And yeah, I hope that we can do more, and we can achieve SDGs, planetary health, climate adaptation, and DRIP. Yeah, so thanks.
Shinako-san, I just want any last things that we haven't talked about that you would like to.
No, I'm pretty much so sure what we're doing, and then we want to try. And then because I have, friends and family here, then we can work together. And I want to keep going. And then please come for our event on Friday. It's going to be the first time for us for the collaboration with other Indigenous group too. And then that's really interesting. And yeah, and then that's live stream too, right? So watch.
Thank you. I would like to just close with a prayer that I have. It's a small thing. So I've heard so many beautiful ideas on concepts on a grand scale. My prayer would be very small, very doable. It's just to for every single being on this earth to become a little bit more aware of their feelings, and not to change their feelings, just to be a little bit aware of them and know that the medicine and the power that holds. I believe that the more you understand your feelings, the more it cultivates empathy for others. And I think that when there is empathy and understanding of what impacts other people, a lot of change can be made. So that is my hope and prayer. Yes, please join us on Friday. Thank you, everyone. Thank you, Iped, Davidan.
Yay, cultural survival.
Thank you.